You picked up your phone this morning before you even said a word to another human being. Maybe before you opened your eyes all the way. And the strange part is, you didn't even decide to do it. Your hand just moved. Your thumb was already scrolling before your brain had fully woken up. That's not a habit. That's something closer to a reflex. And the fact that it feels completely normal to you is exactly what we need to talk about. Because what's happening inside your brain when you reach for that phone is not random. It isn't weakness. It isn't laziness. It is the result of one of the most sophisticated psychological engineering projects in human history, built specifically around how your brain is wired, how your emotions work, and what makes you fundamentally human. And the most unsettling part, most people will never realize it's happening to them. Think about the last time you felt genuinely bored, not just waiting for something, truly, deeply bored, with nothing to do and no screen in your hand. Can you even remember it? Most people under 40 cannot, because the moment boredom appears, the phone arrives. It has become the automatic answer to every uncomfortable emotional state. Bored? Phone. Anxious? Phone. Lonely? Phone. Angry? Phone. Even happy. Something good just happened, and the first instinct is to reach for the phone and share it. We have essentially outsourced our entire inner emotional life to a 4-inch rectangle. But to understand why this is happening, you have to understand something about the architecture of your brain that most people were never taught. Deep inside your brain is a structure that neuroscientists call the reward pathway. It runs through a region called the nucleus accumbens and it operates on a neurochemical called dopamine. And here's where almost everyone gets it wrong. Dopamine is not the pleasure chemical, it is the anticipation chemical. It is not released when you get the reward. It is released when you accept a reward might be coming. This is a critical distinction because it means your brain becomes most activated not in the moment of satisfaction but in the moment of uncertainty right before it. Now think about what happens every single time you open Instagram, TikTok, your text messages, or your email. You don't know what's there. Maybe something exciting, maybe nothing. That unpredictability, that small, constant uncertainty is flooding your brain with dopamine every single time. And your brain, which evolved over millions of years to pursue food, safety, and social connection, cannot tell the difference between hunting for survival or hunting for likes. To your ancient neurobiology, scrolling and foraging are the same thing. This is not an accident. The people who built this platform understood this before most neuroscientists were talking about it publicly. In 2017, Sean Parker, the founding president of Facebook, said in an interview that the platform was built to exploit a vulnerability in human psychology. His words, a vulnerability. They knew they were building something that would consume human attention not because it delivered consistent value, but because it delivered unpredictable value, which is the most addictive pattern known to behavioral science. It's the same principle behind slot machines. A slot machine doesn't pay out every time. It doesn't even pay out most of the times, but it pays out sometimes on a schedule that player cannot predict. And that variable reward schedule produces more compulsive behavior than any fixed reward system ever could. B.F. Skinner demonstrated this with pigeons in 1950s. The tech industry applied it to 3 billion human beings 70 years later. But it goes even deeper than dopamine. Because human beings are not just driven by the desire for reward, we are driven by something even more primal than that. We are driven by the fear of social exclusion. For most of human evolutionary history, being rejected by your group meant death. You couldn't survive alone on the savannah. Social belonging was not a luxury, it was survival. And so your brain evolved to be extraordinarily sensitive to social signals, to monitor your status within the group constantly, to feel real psychological pain when you are ignored, excluded, or left out. Now take that ancient, deeply wired fear and attach it to a number, a follower count, a like count, an unread message notification. Every time that number goes up, your brain registers social acceptance. Every time you post something and no one responds, your brain registers a threat, not metaphorically, neurologically. The same pain pathways that fire when you are physically hurt fire when you feel socially ignored. Dr. Naomi Eisenberger at UCLA demonstrated this in brain imaging studies. Social rejection activates the anterior cingulate cortex, the same region activated by physical pain. So when you feel compelled to check your phone to see if anyone responded to what you posted, this is not vanity. This is your prehistoric brain trying to confirm that you are still safe, still accepted, still part of the group. The technology didn't create that need, it just learned to harvest it. And there's a third layer underneath all of this that almost no one talks about. It connects to something the philosopher Blaise Pascal observed in the 17th century. 350 years before the smartphone existed, Pascal wrote that all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. What he understood was that the human mind left to itself will eventually encounter the deeper questions. Who am I? What am I doing with my life? Does any of this matter? Am I happy? These questions are not comfortable. They require courage to sit with. And the phone has become the most efficient tool ever invented for avoiding those questions entirely. Not because it answers them, but because it fills every possible silence before the questions can even form. Think about how you behave in an elevator, in a waiting room, in the 30 seconds between parking your car and walking into a building. Every gap, every pause, every moment of potential inner silence is immediately filled. We have become so skilled at escaping ourselves that most people haven't had a genuinely uninterrupted thought in years. The philosopher Soren Kierkegaard called this the dizziness of freedom, the anxiety that comes from confronting the open space of your own life. The phone doesn't cure that anxiety. It just postpones it indefinitely, while quietly making it worse. Because here is what the research consistently shows. Heavy social media use is not associated with improved well-being. Study after study from Harvard, from Oxford, from the American Psychological Association finds the opposite. The more time people spend passively consuming content on their phones, the higher their rates of anxiety, loneliness, and depression. John Twenge, a psychologist at San Diego State University, tracked decades of American adolescent mental health data and found that the decline in teen well-being correlates almost precisely with the widespread adoption of smartphones. Not correlation as coincidence, correlation so consistent across demographics and countries that the pattern becomes extremely hard to dismiss. And yet, we keep scrolling. Why? Because we feel better in short term. The dopamine hit is real. The temporary relief from boredom or anxiety is real. The momentary sense of connection when someone responds is real. The brain doesn't think in news, it thinks in seconds. And in next 30 seconds, the phone reliably delivers more than the alternative, which is stillness, discomfort, and the unpleasant work of being present with yourself. This is the core trap of all compulsive behavior. The thing that harms you in the long run is the thing that helps you in the moment. And the more you use the escape, the less tolerance you build for the discomfort that drives you toward it. Your ability to sit with boredom, uncertainty, and emotional discomfort. Your psychological resilience quietly atrophies every time you reach for the phone instead of facing what you feel. There is also something happening to your attention that deserves serious consideration. The human attention span is not a fixed biological constant, it is a skill. And like any skill, it strengthens with practice and weakens with negligence. The format of most social media content is specifically calibrated to the shortest viable unit of attention. Short videos, rapid cuts, instant gratification. When you spend hours consuming content in that format, you're not just being entertained. You are training your brain to accept that rhythm. And then you sit down to read a book or listen to a lecture or have a deep conversation, and something feels wrong. It feels slow, it feels tedious. Not because it is, but because you have recalibrated your acceptions of what attention should feel like. Cal Newport, a computer scientist at Georgetown who studies the relationship between technology and cognitive performance, calls this attention residue. The constant task switching, the perpetual partial attention, the habit of checking, it doesn't just occupy the minutes you spend on the phone, it degrades your capacity for deep focus in all the minutes around it. The mind that is always half ready to be interrupted cannot produce the quality of thought that a truly focused mind can. And deep thought, extended, focused, uninterrupted thinking is where nearly everything meaningful in human experience comes from. It is where creativity lives, where genuine insight lives, where the kind of self-understanding that actually changes your life lives, not in the feed. So, what do you do with all of this? The first thing is the hardest. Stop treating your phone use as a moral failure and start treating it as a design problem. You are not weak, you are not undisciplined. You are a human being with a prehistoric brain that is being continuously targeted by some of the most sophisticated behavioral engineers in the world. This is not an excuse to do nothing, but it is an accurate description of what you are actually dealing with. And you cannot solve a problem you don't accurately understand. The second is to rebuild your tolerance for discomfort, one small moment at a time. The next time you feel the urge to check your phone and there is no actual need to, just wait. Not forever, just a little longer than feels comfortable. Let the feeling be there, the anxiety, the restlessness, the vague sense that you're missing something. Observe it. It will not destroy you, and every time you let it pass without reaching for the escape, you are strengthening something in yourself that the algorithm has been quietly trying to take from you. The third thing is to protect silence. Not meditative silence necessarily if that doesn't resonate with you, just ordinary quiet. The kind that used to happen naturally before we filled every second. Walk somewhere without earphones, sit somewhere without your phone on the table, let your mind wander without giving it a destination. Some of the most important thinking you will ever do happens not when you are trying to think, but when you have simply stopped trying to consume. And the fourth thing is the most important and the most subtle. Start asking yourself what you are actually looking for when you reach for the phone. Not rhetorically, genuinely. Because in most cases, the phone is not the thing you actually want. It is a substitute. You want connection. And you are scrolling instead of calling someone you love. You want meaning. And you're watching other people pursue theirs. You want rest. And you're stimulating yourself until you pass out from exhaustion. The phone is not the enemy of your life, but it has, for many people, become the very efficient substitute for the life they actually want to be living. Here's what no one tells you about this. The discomfort you feel when you put the phone down is not an obstacle to your life. It is the entrance to it. The boredom, the silence, the urge to scroll, the mild existential anxiety when there's nothing to distract you. That is the space where you actually exist, where the real questions live, where you find out what you actually want, who you actually are, what actually matters to you when no one is watching and no algorithm is suggesting. Pascal was right. The problem is not the phone, the problem is the room we are still afraid to sit in. The phone just made it easier to stay outside the door forever. But you don't have to. If this shifted something in how you see your own behavior, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below. I generally read them, and I want to know what's the one thing you reach for your phone to escape. Subscribe if you want to keep going deeper on how your mind actually works, because that is the only conversation worth having. See you in the next one.